That's why I feel like I can help so much, Jing, because the landscape in America and here in the Philippines is very. There's a lot of similarities. You know, a lot of similarities. I think. When I was growing up in America, it was really still developing. Imagine when I'm born, there's not even a pro league when I'm born, 1985. There's no pro league at that moment. So, you know, I was there for that developmental stages of America, and that's why, you know, we're here in the Philippines. It's basically still developmental stages. So, I feel like, you know, there's a lot to take from American how they went about it, because it's a pay-to-play system.
Welcome to Across the Line. It is another Football Friday, and today we've got Nate Burkey on the show. Former Philippine Azkals, played for Kaya, played for Pachanga, played for Ceres and Davao. Extensive playing career here in the Philippines. And on this episode, we really get a chance to get to know Nate Burkey before the Philippines, along with some excerpts of his time here in the country. But a fascinating story, Chris, that probably nobody has ever heard of yet.
He's been a teammate of mine with Kaya, teammate with me for the national team, and yet so much of that conversation I had no idea about. So really nice to hear his tales of growing up in the US, the difficulties he experienced going on trial in Europe, you know, some of the missed opportunities that he had, and then subsequently how he randomly ended up here in the Philippines and forging a career here. Lots of ups and downs within his career here in the domestic game, but ultimately he's still here living a life, working in the academy and with my brother, and trying to forge you know, a new path within the youth football space. So it's a really great story. I think something for everyone, whether it's a young kid who's aspiring, you know, a parent looking at how best to develop their kid. I think there's so much information out there in this episode that a lot of people will resonate with. So it's been a really fun conversation.
Even players who are already in and around the professional game who are probably finding it difficult, man, you could pick something up from this episode, that is for sure. And of course, we had him here because of his open letter, right? He'd come out with a passionate narrative, a long form post that he put on Facebook, and it resonated with a lot of people, and he touched on a lot of important points that perhaps need to be discussed, and we get an opportunity to do that here as well. So we hope you enjoyed this episode with Nate Burkey. If you do, please do subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Look for us on social media over Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. Feel free to tell us your comments and suggestions there, and what you thought of this episode with Nate Burkey. And that is it. Without further ado, we've got the man himself, Nate Burkey, on the show here on Across the Line. We've got Nate Burkey on the show today, and he is a man that is on everybody's minds as of the moment, because he's come out with an open letter to Philippine football, and he's got everybody thinking and considering about how they feel about Philippine football as of the moment. And we've gotten through the letter, and it's been a fantastic read and an opportunity to reconnect with a lot of individuals who have come out of the woodwork and had their say about how they feel about Philippine football as of the moment. Nate, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, both of you guys. I appreciate it. And I just want to say, first off, that I am a fan of your guys' show big time, and what you guys are doing is massive for Philippine football. And I'm proud and happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Hey, man, we appreciate that. Chris, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm really glad that we've got Nate on the show. He's been a guy we've been trying to pin down for a while. We just haven't really kind of got round to it. And then this week he announced himself in a big way with his open letter. So we thought, what better time to get him on and have him sort of explain his I don't say short story, really long story.
It's quite long.
Yeah, it's a long read, mate. He needed a few chapters in there. But I think it was a good time, a really good time to get him on, talk about not just that, but his just general thoughts on the game. I know he's got a lot of really positive insights, having worked behind the scenes as a coach, but also as a player with a national team, and been involved with football here on a domestic scene for such a long time. So, yeah, great time to speak to him, really, and wanted to pick his brain on a number of different issues. So really excited for this one, Jing. Should be a good one.
Just to give everybody a bit of a background on Nate, right? For those that are just getting into Philippine football, recently you will have caught Nate in 2017 playing for Davao Agilas.
Mhm.
Were you still there in 2018, Nate?
Um, no.
2017 then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my contract might have been to that point, but due to my injury, we came to an agreement, and
Right.
I was still like going to games and supporting them,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
obviously I can't like train and play. So,
Right.
you know,
So
I think 2018 I was no longer really part of the club
unfortunately,
per se.
you had gone down with an injury that was very difficult to overcome. And you had arrived at 2011, and you really announced yourself on the stage here in Philippine football, getting involved with Kaya. You had gotten involved with the national team as well. Had a good run with Kaya, and then went on to Pachanga Diliman, where you also made waves. And then
Yeah,
that sort of got the attention of Ceres Negros. You played there, and then eventually you moved over to Davao Agilas, and now here we are. It's
there we
gone in
are.
a blink of an eye, man. 9 years
Yeah.
down the road, and here we are. You're currently coaching with Chris's brother's academy at G8, and
Hmm.
it seems like there's a lot of passion. There's a lot of things that you've been thinking about with regards to Philippine football. What
Yeah.
was the reason behind coming out with this letter, man?
Well, I think first and foremost, what really got me back into Philippine football was my son. I brought him to the Kaya Academy. I know Chris has, I have full faith in Chris and what they're doing over there. And he was the youngest kid, and I really just wanted to put him in the environment. So that was the first step of me getting back into Philippine football. And then, um, honestly, it was your guys' episode a couple weeks ago when you were so fired up. It really resonated with me. Um, so and then my memory of the Sri Lanka goal came up, and I was like, now's a good time to kind of reflect on things. And what better time now we're in quarantine. And then after the memory, I was like, there's just so much more I want to say. And I never thanked the teams. So that's why I kind of wrote that open letter to Philippine football. Um, I can remember, Jing, we were in Bel Air like 2 years ago surfing, remember?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like I was out of Philippine football. It's kind of like a dark moment for me, but we were talking, we were having that conversation, and you were like, what are you up to? What have you been doing? And I was just like, honestly, I'm just being a full-time father. I really am kind of lost right now. And you were like, well, you gotta show your face at some point, and I always look back and like, he's right, so now's the time. And I feel confident and comfortable to talk about a little bit about my story, but more importantly, talk about Philippine football and what I'd like to see for the future and how we can make things better,
Yeah. There were a lot of things that were mentioned in that, Chris. And if you had an opportunity to go through it yourself, what are the parts that stood out to you, Chris?
All the parts that you mentioned me were obviously massive. And I think maybe at some point we'll get on to my,
Mm-hmm.
I think Nate's path into Philippine football, I'm sort of entangled in that in some way, shape or form.
100%, Chris.
At different points. And we'll probably come on to that a little bit later, Nate, because maybe that's one way we can kind of go through your backstory a little bit. But keeping on the theme of the letter, I think one thing that resonated with me is not necessarily the points that he made, because I think that they're quite valid, but the fact that he is passionate about youth football, passionate about the development of the sport in this country. That's the most important thing. That's the overarching theme. And I think there are a bunch of people amongst our generation who feel that way. And I guess we're all trying to find inroads into how we can help and how we can influence the current Philippine football landscape. And I think one of the things that is become more prominent, especially in the last couple of years, you're seeing obviously a lot of ex-players getting involved with either setting up academies, working within academies, working within schools, and they're really trying to do their bit for the football landscape here in the country. But there is also a sense of dissidence, disenfranchisement from the establishment, and just, I guess, in a nice way. I don't think it's an aggressive format, Jing. I don't think we're sort of outside the PFF office picketing, but it's more like, these kids deserve better. They deserve better than what we got. we've made a lot of great strides, and it's more like, let's all be accountable for this. We're going to do our part, but we also need help. We need people to step up to the plate and do their bit to facilitate that growth. And if they're not, that's no problem either, right? I totally get that. If they don't want to help, I don't want to get involved, no problem. But then leave us to do the best that we can with the projects that we're trying to get off the ground, and just maybe try to facilitate those. You don't even have to do too much. You can just sit back and try to facilitate some of the things that we're doing. And I think that was one of the things that resonated with me. It wasn't necessarily individual points. I think we've all got our own opinions, and they're all valid. And I'm sure Nate will expand on that when he gets his opportunity to speak about it. But it's more just, what's great is having that passion and that fervor and that enthusiasm to want to get involved with the sport, and hopefully continue on this upward trajectory. One that we've seen with the national team. At the very pinnacle, but not so much perhaps on the lower levels, which is why we want to get down into the trenches a little bit more, I think, and help out at that level, Nate. Is that fair?
100%, because that's actually one of my goals in the future, to maybe try and handle one of these youth national teams, boys or girls. And I think that would be something I would really like to do. I got the opportunity when I was with the Chelsea Football Academy. I was with the Young Husband brothers. I was the TD over there. And they had an event at the Blue Pitch. And, I had this great opportunity to coach the U12 boys for just one session. But, it was just inspiring. And I just really enjoyed that. The kids reacted well. And it was just overall a really good experience.
Yeah, one thing that's quite interesting to me that came out in that letter, as you said, Chris, nothing specific that we can get into maybe a little bit later on. But for me, the overarching theme was that there was this kind of vibe when a lot of the foreign-born Filipinos started coming back to the Philippines, right? That there was this notion from some of the locals that some of the foreign-born guys are coming here for an easy payday, right? They're coming here and they're trying to get involved, not that the Azkals are popular, and they're trying to get a piece of that, right? And there was a little bit of a negativity that was placed upon foreign-born Filipinos for that reason. But now we're seeing, after almost a decade here, that you guys are still here, right? Everybody is still here. And
some of us, not everyone, some of us.
True. A lot of you guys is what I'm saying.
Yeah, a lot of us are here. Yeah.
And you guys are wanting to get involved and wanting to do your part, right? Which is more than you can say for a lot of the players that have come out and hung up their boots, right? So clearly you guys have a platform, right? You have more eyes on you for whatever reasons in the past, and now you guys are getting an opportunity to speak your mind, and now here it is. And as you said, you've had a couple years to reflect exactly on how you feel about Philippine football. So tell us a little bit about that. For those that didn't get a chance to read your letter, or how do you feel about Philippine football at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in the letter, but if no one has read it, obviously, I think there is a positive youth movement with all of the, coaching and players getting involved and academies being set up, and that's positive. But obviously, if we don't have a sustainable run league, where are these kids going to play? In my opinion, the league has taken steps backwards. It progressed kind of in my years, like maybe a little bit of plateau, but as soon as we tried this new concept and tried to abide by AFC rules and go into a national league, things kind of went south. I mean, Jing, if the PBA cannot run a national league, how can we run a national league? Even if we have funding or whatnot, it's a logistic nightmare. And you saw how many teams folded quickly, and it's sad, but I'm an optimistic person always. And, we just kind of got to reassess. And, my whole thing with Philippines is like, the intentions are normally always good. It's the execution,
And that was the first year. 2017 was basically the only year really where everybody was forced to travel to every destination.
Yes.
Bacolod, Davao, Cebu,
Iloilo.
Iloilo came in 2018, but then again in 2018, how many teams could travel to Iloilo at that time? Not everybody did. So by 2018, it was already like everybody was trying to avoid traveling from city to city because flying, hotels, it's expensive, man. And if there's no money coming in, then all the money's going out. It can't last very long, right? So that's sort of the situation that we found ourselves in. Last year, everything was back to being centralized here in Manila. There was maybe one or two matches in Iloilo, but centralized, maybe just a little bit more feasible, right?
I believe so. I mean, it makes sense. And the reason why I keep reverting to the PBA is because they've been doing something right, you know. Yes, they have all these major sponsors, but they're still doing something right. And they still play games in the provinces, which is something I think should have been into consideration. You know, we could have easily focused the league in Manila and just held, you know, exhibition, not even exhibition, but we could have like real games taking place in these locations, but where it's like better organized, and, you know, it would have made a lot more sense, you know. But here we are, and we're just trying to move forward, and like I said, trying to make things better.
You know, one of the things that I think with that, Nate, is I don't have a crystal ball. Like I'm not a prophet or anything like that. I'm not Nostradamus. But I remember having a meeting with some people who were quite close to the whole the task force or the organizational committee that was put together before they actually started going out and picking up where these teams were going to get set up. And I remember speaking to one of these guys. I won't mention his name, but we all know who he is. I said it's going to fail. I said there's absolutely no way on earth that clubs have got the organization to be able to facilitate all of these things just from a logistical standpoint. Like the amount of time and effort it takes, obviously, to book the flights, to book the hotels, the transport to and from games, you know, and then that tempered with all of the compliance that everyone was having to do. For me, it was so difficult for these clubs, and they weren't ready for it. They just weren't ready for it. And I said, this is going to be the death of the league as we know it. Because as you said, I felt when we first came in, I mean, you came in, you actually based here before me, but that sort of 2012, 13, 14 period, that was really when it was at its height in terms of quality, in terms of excitement, entertainment on television, obviously. And it's a shame we couldn't build on that platform, because I think we were always striving to get this AFC you know, mandate that we had to fulfill, but the clubs just weren't ready for it, or certain clubs, the majority of clubs weren't ready for it. And I think what you said was spot on. Like I think the intentions were good, the idea was good, but the execution was poor. And I think you only have to look at things like, you know, look how the NFL have done it. You know, they go and do these games, even NBA do it. They go to London, they do a basketball game, they do an NFL game, and those games are sold out. They are packed to the rafters. They're always televised. And that's obviously a great way to attract the market. One of the things that we've noticed here in the Philippines is the fact that things blow up quickly, right? I mean, you were there at LA Galaxy game, Nate. You were playing me that game. And that, I mean, the fervor and excitement around that game was just unbelievable. But you couldn't give away a ticket these days for a national team game. You couldn't give away a ticket. Right, so something must have happened over that window. But if you were to pitch Kaya against Ceres game in the province, one-off game, for sure you're going to get that sold out. For sure, if you know that's the one game you're going to go and play, and you spend a bit of time down there generating fans, building relationships, like the NFL does. They do a great job. They go into the communities, they do their little bits and pieces with the media. You know, they build up that excitement, and then all of a sudden that generates that interest around the club, or around the event, or around the league, or whatever that might be. But there just isn't that, and there isn't that, because no one's at the moment, I don't feel, are willing to go down and actually put in the hard graft to cultivate these relationships and cultivate and fertilize that ground so the league can grow. Does that make sense? So totally. I think that's that. I think you're spot on with that. I think there's a lot of good intentions, and I don't want to knock anyone, but in terms of actually thinking through the stages and the steps that are needed in order for it to grow, it's not simply as a case of just rocking up to Cebu or rocking up to Davao and just thinking that loads of fans are going to come up on a regular basis. It's just not going to work, and I totally agree with what you're saying there.
And the thing is, Chris, it doesn't like have to just be Kaya Saris. We could have made like 4 or 5 games down there, like have all the teams go there. You know what I mean? Imagine that. All the teams go on that venue for that week or something like that. And then it's kind of like an event. But those
4 games,
are
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah. 2 games a day. And it's like, there'll be a huge buzz, and it's a lot more economical, feasible, So, I mean, hindsight's 2020, but these are all great ideas, obviously. And let's just hope we can move forward in the right direction and get things back on track, I would say.
The strange thing is, sorry, that was supposed to be the plan for PPL, right? The league that never got off the ground. That was their plan, was to play centrally and then to host festival type events that would run for a weekend or 2 over in one spot where all the teams would go. And you would have musical acts, you'll have celebrations outside of it, and play the games there, which was fantastic idea.
I wonder what happened then. If that was the initial, if that's the initial idea, what happened?
The league got blown up. So 2 of the teams were forced to drop out because their licenses were revoked. And then 2 weeks later, their licenses magically were approved.
But Jing, how do they go from doing exactly what you just said to traveling every single game? It's like night and day. It's night and day.
Well, the PPL came in 2000, when was it, 19, that they were supposed to be there, and then never got an opportunity to really see their vision come through. So unfortunately for them, we never got to see if that was going to work out or not. But it's a notion that's out there that it's obviously, I mean, it's an idea that makes sense, right? It makes sense. Totally. It makes sense to be put out there.
Especially here in the Philippines, because the traveling is not something to look over here in the Philippines.
Right. You got to hop on a plane.
Here's my map. Everything's like, it's not. The Philippines is huge. It's huge. To get from, let's say, Davao all the way to Ilocos, I'm like, come on. It's like the longest travel. Yeah. And to expect teams to do that on a weekly basis just was not feasible at all.
Right. Sorry to cut you off there, Chris.
Yeah, no, I forgot what I was going to say now. I think you touched on some of the points that I wanted to raise, but I was just wondering, like with the league, what other things did you think contributed to that sort of downward spiral? Because as we've alluded to, that first 2 years were just, certainly when you and I were together playing in the PFL, UFL, things seemed to be on the right track, and you could see that there was definitely something bubbling with regards to the league. What were some of the other things that you thought perhaps contributed to that negative?
Obviously, the ruling of the cap of the foreign players. Okay, this obviously had a big result of a lot of teams not being able to commit. A lot of people said maybe they did it too soon, but I'm not against it. I'm just thinking it could have been done differently to where, I don't know, what was the, because when you came, Chris, what was the rule? There was no rules, right?
No rule.
And then immediately from no rule, they go to the 3+1, or no, it was 5 foreigners first.
Yeah, something like that. I think it might have been 5+1, no? And then before,
no, I think it was 4 foreigners. No.
4.
And then with that 4 foreigners, you could have 8 in the roster. You could have 25 in the roster. It didn't really matter. But you could have 4 in the game day at any one on the pitch at any one time. So I remember games where I would sub like George Boutron for Louis Clark, for example, because you could sub a foreigner for foreigner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the foreign rule could have been maybe done a little better to help, because I mean we already had so many quality players in the country, so to not to like deny them or make their reason to play, it was more difficult for them, And we do want to focus on the Filipinos, but we don't want to do it in a way to where we're, deteriorating the league. or the quality of play.
Yeah.
I think, like, again, what you said there, Jing, like, it was talking earlier about the good intentions. I think the idea behind it was all right. The idea is that you're going to now promote Filipino players. They're going to have to be pushed and they're going to be put in the spotlight and they're going to be playing at a level. So the level is going to increase. When in actuality, what happened was those kids weren't able to be pushed into that spotlight, you know, like collegiate kids, for example, because there wasn't the financial benefits of them going, deferring a year at college and coming into the professional game. So that really didn't happen. So then we were left with a lot of clubs playing mediocre players in a league that the previous year was a pretty good standard. And then you had, you know, foreign individuals sit in the bench while they would see, you know, local guys perform who just weren't up to the standard. The second thing with that also was you then completely isolated a lot of the teams that had really strong bonds with certain communities. So, for example, Pasogad, you know, had a lot of the Iranian boys, and they had a really strong identity within the Iranian community. Nomads obviously had a really strong expat community, and they'd been participating on that front for a number of different years. You know, they were one of the founding members of the league. So for them to be...
Socceroo had a huge following.
Big following. And if you look at it, they were really good at, we talked about them last week, the Korean guys that they had, and they've had a number of really good foreign signings that they had. And then what you found, Manila All Japan, that goes without saying. So, you know, we've got all of these clubs where they were immediately ostracized from a ruling. And if you remember, the ruling was made extremely late. It wasn't even like the season ended, right, we'll give you 6 months. It was about 3 or 4 weeks before the season was about to start. And it was like, wow, this is going to absolutely cripple a bunch of clubs. And I've got no problem, again, with adhering to certain set of standards.
Right.
But those standards would not have needed to be met by a Nomads or a Pasogad, because these teams weren't necessarily looking to maybe progress and to perform at the AFC level.
Cup. Right.
So, and even if those clubs were looking to play at that level, then no problem. Have your 8 foreigners and just make sure that you adhere to the 4+1 on a game day. No problem.
Yeah.
You know, Thailand has that. Thailand has that in their domestic leagues, right? So they have a different rule for the domestic league versus what they have to play in the Champions League. So there's no need to have isolated and ostracized so many
not a growing
promising
league. Not a growing league.
A growing and developing
league.
league, Nate.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that.
I think that was a really watershed moment, guys. I think that was a real watershed moment in a league. And while it provided a few benefits for some of the local players in terms of obviously upping their value and therefore being able to perhaps monetize, you know, capitalize monetarily on that particular front, it actually had a huge negative impact on the league, certainly in the quality. And I agree, it was one of the things that led to the downward spiral of the domestic game here.
So now we've had an opportunity to kind of see all of that play out, right? So we've got the benefit of seeing and experiencing all of that transpire. And now we have an opportunity sort of, especially now that we're in quarantine, to really reassess and reflect, as Nate alluded to earlier. But I'm kind of interested in, before we tackle sort of how we foresee the next few months or the next few years, I'm kind of interested in going back a little bit to your origin, Nate. You know, we're talking a lot about the glory days, so to speak, of the UFL, and that's when you arrived. You were bang smack in the middle of that. 2011, things were on fire for the world of football. And in the open letter that you posted, you added some photos as well. Rafters are packed, man. It looks great. The atmosphere is fantastic, you know. And I also had an opportunity to see your highlights. Fans in the stands watching this stuff, and everything was on TV. How did you know about Philippine football? Obviously, the Azkals had blown up in 2010, but you moved over here. Did you know that there was a domestic game going on? What was the whole process of you knowing about coming over here to the Philippines?
So where do I begin? I guess do I start in the beginning?
Go for it, man.
Or right when I moved here, because I've initially, Chris knows this, initially heard about the Philippine national team back in 2004 from my junior college coach, David Sexton, whose family is a big name in England. And so he told me, he pulled me aside freshman year. He's like, Nate, your mom's Filipino, right? And I said, yes. He said, well, there's a player by the name of Greatwich, who's an English Filipino, and he's playing for the national team. And I had no idea. I was shocked, Jing. I was like, that's when the dreams planted, 2004, you know. And so coming up to fast forwarding to like 2011, right before I came, I got in touch with the national team. My mom did, and they invited me for the May 11 trial. So my situation is just like, I got to get there, but I got to find a way to stay. You know, it can't just be the national team. Like maybe there's other opportunities to play. So it was actually with a close friend of mine by the name of Koi Bifan, and we were just researching. And the UFL was in its infancy at that point because it started before I got there. So we just kind of looked online, and we saw what was advertised at the moment, you know, and it looked great. There was like night games, it was packed. I didn't know much, but I immediately contacted the league, and then Arman happened to be the only one to reply. And so him and I were in touch on my way to Philippines. So yeah, I just kind of wanted like that assurance to stay here, you know, and play here, whichever way possible it would be. It was really just like a leap of faith kind of thing. You know, my mom booked, it was one-way flight. The ticket my mom booked. I love her to death. She's amazing, and she's really the reason why I was here. But you know, she took her mileages, booked it one way, and she was so stoked. Like, I remember I was home, okay, because I had just gotten back from a Bulgaria trial that didn't really work out. And, you know, she knows that we've been trying to get in touch with the national team. She comes into the room grinning ear to ear, like, you know, we got in touch. They're going to invite you. You can go to the open trial for the World Cup qualifiers. And I was like happy, but I was a little hesitant because I was like, damn, I just got back. You know, I got to tell both my jobs I'm leaving, but I knew I'm not coming back, you know? So yeah, when I arrived, I had an experience with Kaya or with Arman, who was kind of like the Kaya manager at that moment. And, you know, he was happy with what he saw at the Mini World Cup. And then, yeah, we had the Azkals trial. Looking back though, Jing, I feel like a little naive, you know, when I signed that first contract, because at the moment I would have signed for peanuts, and it's exactly what I did. But I wish I had, you know, looking back, it's like maybe you wait. Maybe I wait to sign a Kaya contract until this national team run, so my stock value goes higher and I can negotiate better. But that's just part of the business and the experience side of professional football that I obviously had none at that point. But I'm so thankful that I was able to sign that contract and have those early years with Kaya. You know, it was a lot of fun, a lot of fun.
Wow, man, talk about gambling on yourself there, huh? Like,
sorry, man.
That's incredible. Like you just went. You know what I mean? There was no groundwork laid down for you. You were taking quite a chance.
And this is an open trial. This is not like the team knows me. They see videos and they're like, we want that guy. It was still a lot of risk. You know, there's many risks. 2 jobs that I had to leave. All my family, all my friends, but I don't regret it, you know, at all. Like I said, that dream had been planted since 2004 once he told me about Chris Greatwich and the Philippine national team. And then 2007, when the Hanoi came, that's when I was like, all right, I got to get over there ASAP, because, you know, had I been involved earlier, maybe I'm involved in that team. But if not, you know, things worked out for the best, you know. Things worked out for the best.
It's incredible. Christopher Greatwich, again, your fingerprints on another inbound talent into the Philippines.
Chris, did you know Dave Sexton, or he just kind of knew you?
So yeah, infamous. Very, big time, notorious on the East Coast. So a lot of people knew about me. But the real story here, Jing, is that Dave's dad is like a really famous football coach in the UK. And I think he even coached at my old club, Brighton, before I was there. Don't quote me on that. But Dave, well-known football figure. And then his son was coaching at your community college, Lewisburg, right? Lewisburg.
Junior college. There's a difference.
Junior college. Junior college. Basically, it's still an academic institution for people who can't get into a 4-year program.
100%.
So these are for the bad boys, right? The bad boys. Or in the case of how I know Dave, is through a friend of mine, Phil Flannery, who went there for 2 years.
Okay.
Ironically, he went there for 2 years with Adam Reiki. So that's Adam Reiki also went to that school, believe it or not.
Hiya, coach.
So um, Adam Reiki went to, I forget where he went to. I think he went to Niagara. I think he went to another New York school. And Flan went to Hartwick, which is where I ended up going. So that's the connection there, really. So a guy who was probably 2 or 3 years outside of your time at Lewisburg, he then played with me in America. So that's kind of how they found out, because I was teammates with one of his former players.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, that's the kind of the inner workings of that one. I think he actually messaged me. I think Nate messaged me at one point, was like maybe on Facebook or something. It was like, oh, I'd like to get involved. Then the usual stuff, you know, like I always forward on people's information, always forward on, like send a message to the federation or whatever. And I don't know if it was if it was your mum pressing, or if that email just got straight to the junk file or whatever. But it was definitely something that I tried to put forward to the PFF for a long time before you managed to get your actual full fully fledged debut. But like you said, it all kind of worked out in the end, and it's so that's a great way to piece that story all together.
Yeah, man. I remember because we first met at the Galaxy game. You remember that? That's the first time we officially met, Chris. And
what year was that?
That was 2000. I think it was 12, Chris, before you came officially. I think you came for that game.
11.
You're right. 2011.
December 2011. So that would have been, because it was, I basically missed that whole year for various reasons, and then just came back for that game. That was my first game of 2011. So that was the first time I was back post Suzuki Cup 2010. Right. And then there was a bunch of hangers on, Jing, a bunch of Johnny come latelys. Wanted to sniff of the action. So it was. I mean, that was quite a good group though. It was a start of a new era, of a new dawn of foreign-based Filipinos coming over. It was a really good time. It was a really good atmosphere. What can you remember of that? Because would that, am I right in saying that would have been one of your second international camps?
Yeah. Well, first was obviously when I arrived in 2011, and then
the Challenge Cup, right?
No, the World Cup qualifiers were my first.
Okay.
So I came in May 2011. We had tryouts. We went to Iloilo. I met your brother for the first time in Cebu. Then from there, they made the lineup, and we went to Germany right before the game. So I obviously got my first cap at the World Cup qualifier against Sri Lanka, which was just, the Germany camp itself was a lot of fun. But even those months in the Philippines where it's like everything's being thrown at you, when I arrived, was quite a whirlwind, man. Like I can just remember traveling so many places. Even before we went to Iloilo, we had just a promotional thing in Leyte, which was beautiful because my mom is from Leyte. So we went down there, boss dance from Tacloban. We did a little promotional thing. They had a youth tournament, and actually one of the local newspaper magazines did a little write-up on me. And it was really nice because, like I said, my mom is from Leyte. I've been there all my previous trips, and it felt really nice to be recognized for a little bit for my achievements, even though I haven't really done anything. But I guess just the connection was the main thing.
So you'd come around and visit the Philippines.
Yeah, I had been in the Philippines 3 times prior to 2011: 94, 98, 2007. Then I finally migrated 2011. So college, I graduate. My mom, we take the family. It was in this trip, 2011, or 2007, where I said to myself, I just had a phenomenal trip. We went all over. I was like, at some point in my life, I'm going to move there and spend my life there. I didn't think it would be this long or work out the way it did, but I remember I was just like, I want to be there. I want to live there. And then fate had it, 2011, doors opened, and just kind of you just take advantage of those moments. You have to.
So you're born in DC, grow up where? In Virginia, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
You
that's
grew up a
right.
little
Born in
bit?
D.C., Alexandria, Virginia. My father was an American, basically from Virginia, and my mother migrated to the U.S. in 1970. They get together in 1980. I'm born in 1985. 1987, unfortunately, my father passes away. Okay, so before my mom and dad got together, he had cancer. He was in remission, and the doctor even told him like, "You only got a few months." Like he had 5 years after
Mm.
he told that. So it was really five. Those last 5 years. My brother was 5 when he passed. I was 2.5. And yeah, my mom, being the incredible strong woman that she is, and she's so smart, Jing. She worked for the World Bank. Okay, so she's been there her whole life.
Mm.
She put us into football. Um, I, that's a story she'll have to say, but yeah, she put us into football at a young age, really young. And I was just following my brother. My brother's older than me, obviously. And Chris, I want to touch point on the story because you're really going to appreciate this with our first trainer. It's a pet peeve of yours. But yeah, I want to touch point on my foundation and trainer because he really is the sole reason for my foundation and technique. A guy by the name of Pedro Caballero. He's a Peruvian. Okay, anyone in Alexander City at this moment in generation trained under him at least once. Okay, so his philosophy, it's really ball mastery. Before you can, do anything. And this is old school. So I remember when he first looked at my brother, they had this pass mat. It would like go up a hill, it would go up a ramp and then come back. So I remember because he was like coaching my brother. My brother's still in like streetwear gear and my brother was playing already, but never had official training. So he's just working on the passing technique, locking the ankle, hitting the ball properly, and we ended up buying one of these things, and it's just a great passing thing. But another thing was juggling. Now, I know a lot of coaches aren't big on juggling because they have their reasons, but for me, it had such a huge influence in my life, and I see how big it is in developing. Obviously, there's a point where juggling, it doesn't really make sense anymore. But at a youth level, it has so many benefits: balance, coordination, creativity to a certain extent. So after the juggling, he literally would give us a counter. So we would have a counter and we'd have to do 500 touches, not in a row, but 500 touches before we moved on to the next thing, which was Corver. Okay. Now, Corver in the 80s and 90s is much different than it is now. They had sets. Okay. So it'd be like 1 to 10, and they go over all of the classic Corver moves like the Stanley Matthews or the Revelino, which is a pullback, or the scissors or the Maradona. It was 1 to 10. Okay. And he literally breaks down all of your fundamental techniques on how you're touching the ball, where's your foot. It should be like this. Is really like really he's really critiquing you. Okay. We spent hours and hours with this guy, years and years early on. So, you do like 1 to 10 with the right, 1 to 10 with the left, and you do it 10 times. So it's really like the first 2 hours or hour, you're really just you and the ball. And after that, he sets up his flags and we just play. We do 1-on-1, 2v2. So this guy really is the foundation for my technique. And my brother, who at the time was a beast, man. Imagine Nate Burkey, older, left-footed, faster, stronger. That's my brother growing up. Okay. So Chris, touch on your point. What happens? Obviously, he excels. We go to play at, he's in his league. I'm in my first like house league team. He's in his Alexandria team. Springfield Youth Club comes and plays us. What happens, Chris? He balls out. They start to recruit him. They're like big time. They wanted him so bad. And I remember because I was just on the phone with my mom. We had an hour and a half conversation. I'm like, Mom, why did you take us out of Alexandria? John was so happy there. He didn't want to go. And she was like, you're right. He didn't want to go. But the coaches really convinced my mom to go. And obviously I have no say in it, but my brother will tell you to this day that he didn't want to go. We go, kind of works out for me, but at that moment in life, John, my brother, stopped enjoying football. The other team had 2 coaches, one from Trinidad and Tobago, one from Vietnam. Okay, and both of those coaches had sons on that team. So talk about a conflict of interest. Okay, so within I guess the first year, those 2 coaches split. So moving to Springfield, and those 2 coaches split, which my brother really enjoyed. Ian Bain was his name, Trinidad national team player. Really enjoyed his coaching. It's in this moment where my brother kind of loses his joy and his passion. He's a lot different than me. He's an introvert, so I'm an extrovert. For me, it was just meeting new friends, playing. But I want to touch point is because I know it's a big issue in youth football all over the world, especially here in the Philippines. And I just want to address the parents. Say, listen, first and foremost, give credit when credit is due. Okay, and if your coach develops your child, you have to trust the process. You know, don't be in such a rush. Enjoy the journey, like enjoy the process, and give credit when credit is due. And most importantly, listen to the children. If your child doesn't want to go, I understand there might be logistical reasons or economical reasons to move. I can understand that. But at the end of the day, if the child is happy and doesn't want to leave, let him be, regardless of the level or, whatever, you know. So my mom, she's like, don't feel bad for your brother. That's just the way it was. But this is the truth, it really affected him. And I know it can affect a lot of children, a lot. And being with G8, there was an issue when I first arrived, and I know Chris has had I know how Chris feels about this, why I bring it up, Chris, and I know he's had several experiences as well. So I guess my point is, like, listen to the children most importantly, and give credit when the coaches really take the time to develop a child, because it is not easy. From a raw talent to a developed talent is not easy to put in those hours,
Yeah. Quite interesting, right? I mean, we all get into football not because we want to win all the time, or
Yeah,
I mean, it's part of the
game.
Fun. It's part of the fun, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually playing. That's the fun part.
And the joy. Yeah. So, going on from Springfield, like, I get involved with the ODP program. Chris probably knows a little bit about it, but Jing, the ODP program at that time, it stands for the Olympic Development Program. This is the #1 avenue to get to the national team. Okay, you got your district tryouts, then you got your state tryouts, which is all 50 states, then you got your regional tryouts. There'll be 4 regions in the US. So I started doing that. I ended up getting to, like, the regional team at one point, and I get my first international experience, which happened to be in France and Italy. And guess who's with me in this team? Mr. Freddie Adu from the U.S. national team.
Oh,
So this is like Freddie Adu's first exposure, and he was claiming to be, like, I think 10 or 11. We might have been 13 or 14 at that time. You could tell he was younger than us, but not as young as he said he was. But aside the age, the guy was skilled. Like, the talent was incredible. But I think what we saw early on in this tournament, and it kind of affected his play, is his mentality. I mean, the guy was already kind of disrespectful to the players, to some of our players, kind of cocky, and just wasn't a humble guy. And that's not going to get you far in football. I mean, maybe if he had a different mindset, maybe he has a more successful career. But that's that. We ended up winning the tournament. And, it was a good exposure, good experience. That ODP coach ends up being my college coach at Virginia Commonwealth University, which is where I transferred after Lewisburg. So, yeah, I guess after ODP, we do a little bit of high school. I went to TC Williams High School, which is where the Remember the Titans film, I don't know if you guys watched that with Washington. So there's already a lot of history on that school. It was a fun experience, really fun experience. And my last club team is the same club team that OJ played for, which is Team America. Team America Vasco is a complete international team. Like, every player is from a different country. And we have some good tournaments. We end up going to the Dallas Cup. I'm sure Chris has heard of the Dallas Cup. First year, Dallas Cup is the biggest tournament in North America, June. Teams come from all over the country. They have a super group, which is under 17. Like, that year I was there was like Newcastle, U17 national team, Monterrey from Mexico. It's just really a great experience, So, yeah. Trying to think, did I miss anything? Oh, one of my club coaches, Chris, which is what the point that you had that post on, where, like, does your coach need to be a player? This was my first coach who was a player. His name was Irad Young. We were with the Braddock Road Nighthawks, and this is the first time the coach is, like, showing to the team his playing CV. And he had some substantial playing. His father was with the Israel national team, I believe, and it really resonated with me, Chris. That's why I commented on your post, because he would jump in trainings and just kind of show you what's up. Like, you have a different respect for a coach that can jump in and train with you, and you see, oh, like, he does know what the hell he's talking about. He has experience. everything that he's saying, we're going to listen to. And I remember we had a tournament in Pennsylvania, and he kind of just looked at me. I had a great game, and he looked at me after the game and said, "Nate, what are you doing? You should be a national team player." And that always stuck with me. That always stuck with me when he said that. But high school was high school. I was enjoying the years, and I didn't really have the best grades, and my SAT score was even worse. So that kind of brought me to Lewisburg. I can remember senior year really not knowing what I was going to do. I had a lot of colleges recruiting me, but I was just so damn embarrassed by my grades. I basically didn't qualify for NCAA, which is what you need to do. You need to meet a certain requirement. Your SAT score and GPA needs to be a certain level. So I didn't qualify for that. And
can I jump in here, Nate? Can I jump in here, Nate? Right, because I think I'm a massive, massive advocate for the whole collegiate setup in America. I think it accommodates a really broad spectrum of individuals and gives them an opportunity to get a really good foundation and foothold in life that they probably wouldn't if they were just a regular student. So it could be football, it could be lacrosse, whatever the activity is or sport or pursuit that they have, it enables them to perhaps go beyond what their academic profile would normally get them based on a skill set in a specific area that enables them to open doors to a better academic institution, right? Yeah. And that for me is great. I love that. I think it's amazing. But where it does fall short, and this is what I want to explore a little bit with your own personal journey, Nate, is it also does discriminate a little bit with those individuals who probably have a higher level of talent, but for whatever reason have not met the academic requirements. And I know a lot of people, and I hate to say it, we've come across the topic of race on this show, and I know you're a fervent supporter of various movements within this context. But there is definitely a social economic disparity, specifically amongst where I was based in New Jersey within the Hispanic community, for example. So a lot of these kids were extremely talented individuals, but because of whatever their home life was like, whether they're in a bad friendship group, they weren't able to perhaps play at the level that they should have done because they were unable to get the academic standards that was required to get into, a regular standard 4-year institution. So what I want to know with your situation, Nate, is what were some of the contributing factors behind you, not making grades, not getting the right SAT scores, because you come across as quite a smart individual, Nate. So there must have been something here, Nate, that I want to explore and expand upon and dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, no problem. Listen, I got no problem talking about any of my past or history, but I definitely wasn't focused, and I definitely wasn't focused on my studies. I was just really enjoying, in my high school, we had a lot of liberty. It's a public high school. We actually had an off-campus lunch, so we could leave the school, do whatever the hell we wanted, come back and go to school. So just keep in mind all those kinds of possibilities. Kids can do whatever the hell they want. So SAT, I must have took that test so many damn times, Chris. And I'll say I didn't break 1,000. I have definitely want to have an attention issue. Maybe I did have ADD or ADHD. I never got diagnosed, but focusing on tests or reading comprehension was really one of my difficulties. So reading was really one of my difficulties growing up as a youth. I can remember even being in the advanced class at one point in elementary, and then they kind of brought me down. Yeah. So going into high school, I was partying a lot, having a lot of fun, not really thinking about the future. So that's one thing I want to push to the kids is really.
What does fun look like? You could say fun. I mean, for me, maybe playing chess might be fun. So what do you mean by fun? I want to delve deep, Nate. Don't leave any stones unturned here. Come on.
Yeah.
I need
stones,
you to be honest.
You talk about stones. I was a big stoner in high school, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, big time, man. And like I said, we had that off-campus lunch. So I was doing a lot. Was not prioritizing my health. only thing I really regret is just focusing more on my schools, focus more on my studies. You can have that fun, you can go out, you can do what you want, but it's, at the end of the day, if you're getting good grades, it's really all that matters, you know? So that kind of brought to a life-changing moment for me, Chris, because that senior year of high school, I came back from Brazil. We had a training in Brazil. Me and 3 friends of mine went to Brazil. Great experience. We trained with Atlético Paranaense. 3 of my Vasco teammates went. I get back from high school. I get back from that trip, and my brother, you know, he's going through some serious personal issues at this moment. I'm talking about some life-changing moments for the whole family. It affected everyone. Okay. So I can remember my mom driving me down to school by herself, and you know, she's getting ready to drop me off. She prays over me. She's like, she makes me give her some promises, and I focus at that moment. I start to focus. You know, I get my first 3.0, which was I was ecstatic about. I started enjoying going to class. You know, I was more focused on the studies, and then also just getting better with the football. So graduating high school was really a turning point for me, Chris. That's when I kind of started to. There's my son. He just woke up. So yeah, that was a real turning point for me, Chris. You know. Those college years was really just focusing on football and school. I got great grades, not great grades, but I got the best grades that I ever got in my life in college. I enjoyed going to class. You know, I soaked in what was happening. And at Lewisburg College, Chris, it's a small community school, as you say. The highlights are the sports programs. So, you know, they got a really good baseball team, really good basketball team, really good football team, soccer. We freshman year, we make it to the national tournament. It was a great experience, and that's where you want to be in a junior college setup, because that's where all of the Division I schools are. Mm-hmm. So if you don't make it to the national tournament, it's kind of like, you know, what are you doing? You know, you go to junior college to get to that national tournament at the end of the year. We finished 4th. It was a good experience, and then sophomore year, Coach Sexton gets a lot of recruiting from guys from my former high school, from the area, and we come back with a really strong team, really strong team. And unfortunately, we get to the regional finals, and we don't make it. You know, so the only thing that really come out of that year was I made All-American. I had a really good few games in the beginning of that year, scored some nice goals, and I was selected for All-American, which took place at the end of the year. Okay. And I don't know if you ever been to any of those conventions, Chris?
I've not. My brother's been quite a lot.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So at the end of the year, we go to the convention, and this is where I reconnect with Lex and Moy. Lex and Moy we met in OEP back in the day. So we reconnect in Baltimore convention. We're both in the middle of transferring to a new school. Okay. We see each other. We're like loving the reminisce, and we're catching up. And there's like a tournament that takes place at the Baltimore convention. It's like a nightly tournament. Like, men are drinking beer. It's like former pros. It's a high level, actually. It's like 4v4 small goals with goalies. Okay. My college coach is there. He's like, yeah, go play. Because at the point, I'm still not knowing where I'm going to go after Lewisburg. So it's in this point, Jing, where we reconnect with Lex. He's at Rutgers and ends up transferring to Long Island University. And then from Lewisburg College, I end up going to Virginia Commonwealth University. Now, one thing about Dave Sexton in junior college, they're really trying to get players to the next level. They're just trying to get them to keep playing, whether it's Division I, Division II, Division III, whatever it may be. From that junior college, can he get them to the next level? Can they continue playing? Can they continue education? So in the spring, we're playing likes of University of North Carolina. You know, we played Campbell University, which which ended up being my last game for Lewisburg. I had a pretty good game, and that's where the VCU scout is. So from Lewisburg, end of the year, I'm like deciding what I want to do. Campbell was out of the picture because it was out of state. They were offering money, but it was out of state, and it was still too much money. So I had to go in-state, which was a lot cheaper. So the only 2 options were George Mason University and Virginia Commonwealth University. Who went to George Mason, Jing? Mr. Gabe Norwood, basketball player for PVA.
Really?
He was actually there. He was actually there my years at VCU, and I caught up with him recently and was like, man, I watched you play. I was there. I was there when you guys lost to VCU. VCU had a great basketball team. But my decision to go to VCU was, you know, obviously I had that connection with my college coach at the time, and that was the main reason. Also, the style of play that they were playing. So I already have this connection with the coach, and they're playing like an international brand. They recruit heavily international, playing really like good college soccer on the ground. Like it's a different style from most schools. Whereas George Mason was playing quite direct. And I remember because my mom was like, George Mason's closer. She's like, if you go to George Mason, you can commute. I'll buy you a car. But at this point, I was really looking for a college life after Lewisburg College. You know, I really wanted to be in the city, and so VCU worked out. I really enjoy my 2 years at VCU. We didn't have the greatest seasons actually, but overall the experience of the life outside of football and the football experience was also, even though we didn't do well, it was still memorable. The year before I go to VCU, they reached the Elite Eight of the NCAA tournament. So, you know, they had a lot of returning players, some players that went on to the MLS like Dominic Oduro and Andrew Dykstra that we played with. But that first year at VCU was actually like one of the worst seasons in VCU history, sadly. Okay, so we have that. I play a little bit. I get some experience. That summer, we joined the PDL League, which is the Premier Development League. This is the league where all of the college kids are playing. Chris, you know about this league, right? PDL. So this is a highly competitive national league taking place over the summer, all over the country. College kids are playing over the summer just to keep sharp, just to keep fit. So I go down to Williamsburg Legacy. At the end of the season, the coach tells us we have the Northern Virginia Royals, the Richmond Kickers, and the Williamsburg Legacy if you want to play PDL, which I did. I stayed in Richmond and took some summer classes. And the Richmond Kickers weren't really interested, so I went down to Williamsburg and had a great experience down in Williamsburg. They had a coach by the name of Richie Burke. I don't know if you heard of him, Chris. He's an English guy as well, migrated down. And yeah, it was a fun experience. I ended up scoring 2 really, really nice goals against Richmond, and the coach of my college coach sees it. So I bust my ass off that summer, thinking like going into my senior year, like, you know, confident. But as that senior year goes on, I don't start, bro. I start like 2 games at the end of the year. I played, but I wasn't a starter my senior year. For whatever reason, you know, that's just how it was. But I kept playing, and I can remember at the end of college, it's like my last semester. Once the college season ended, Jing, it was like a revelation, epiphany, and a breakdown all in one semester, man. Like, just imagine you're a part of a team your whole life, and then you're no longer a part of a team. It was very liberating, but you know, I look back on that last.
Yeah.
Exactly. I remember looking back at that last semester at VCU as one of my favorite semesters because I didn't have any obligation to go to a coach or go to a meeting, and I was finding things out about myself that I didn't really know. Like, I was just doing my own training. I was in my own head. Nobody could tell me anything. I was so liberated at that moment. I remember going to the VCU practice just to watch. I would, you know, the coach would have his little coaches meeting at the end. I'd walk over just to listen, you know. No, before, if I'm on the team, I'm not part of that meeting, but I'm done playing. I'm like, I just want to listen, hear what they're saying. I was always trying to get myself into these experiences. So yeah, I'm like stoked. I'm like, I'm going to try and go pro. That was my thing, you know. So after that season started the first USL Showcase, which is the United Soccer League Showcase, the tier below MLS. This is the first year they did it, Chris. They had like 150 players. Basically, anyone with a resume, they're gonna let in. So, like most things in my life, after I leave, things got better. The years after, they cut it down and made it a bit more of a inclusion type process. But that was my first professional experience per se, and I can remember because after school I went home because we flew out of DC And I reconnected with that Trinidadian national team coach or national team player before, who coached my brother, coached me, a guy by the name of Ian Bain. So I hit him up. I'm like, Ian, I'm trying to play pro. I got this USL showcase. Can you train me? Can we meet? And he's like, done. Come over 8 a.m. I go over to his house. And I remember this experience so much because so much of what he told me, it sticks with me. And I preach it whenever possible. But he trains me one-on-one. And the entire time, Chris, he's talking. You know, he's like, what position you want to play? I'm like, well, I'm going to go as a winger, left or right. And he's telling me things that I never knew, like, you know, keep your heels as far to the end line. Like the end line is either your friend or your enemy. You know, he talks to me about the different checks to the ball. You know, he's telling me how to recover, like when you're trying to catch your breath, like take a deep breath in with the nose, blow quick out the mouth, just to expand those lungs. He's telling me, this is the one that really stuck with me, Chris, is, Nate, you have to believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. So that really stuck with me. He said so many things that I had to write down. He was like, when you're done, after this, go home, take a pen, write it down, refer to those things while you're on the bus or getting ready to train. He mentioned things like taking a long cool down, make sure you stretch properly at the end. So that's why I was always stretching a lot after trainings or games. Trying to think what else he might have said. But yeah, I go down to it's in Florida. Like I said, it's like overcasted with so many players, all dreaming big. And the only thing that really comes from that showcase is a FIFA agent from Spain. He really, really wanted me to bring me to Spain, and the Richmond Kickers pro team, which was a bit of a surprise, but I was stoked because I'm in school trying to finish my last semester. And then the Richmond Kickers say, when you get back to school, Nate, come to our winter camp. You know, so I'm still finishing my school. I literally have like a 10 a.m. child psychology class the day of practice, which was a 7 a.m. training. This is one that I really don't understand too much because it never really gave me a good reason, because I came into that training camp scoring goals, taking players on, keeping the ball, I was sharp. You know, I really felt like I would have signed for anything at that moment too, because it's like, I just want to play, you know? So about 2 weeks of training, doing well, scoring goals, like I said, and, you know, they tell me, yeah, things are going to work out. So, okay, that's fine. You know, I finished my degree and, do one more summer league in Fredericksburg and really try to stay in Richmond because I really enjoyed Richmond, but things didn't work out. So I ended up going home back with mommy. Back in Alexandria, and then this is 2007. So it was really 4 years before I got to 2011. It was really, those 4 years were, there's a lot happened. I tore my ACL. Before I tore my ACL, I go to Europe. I was just a friend of mine who went to George Mason, the guy who brought me for my official visit. He had some experience. He had some agent, had some ties. So, you know, I'm still dreaming at this point. Like, let's do it. Like, I didn't really know what was out there. Nothing was concrete, but we fly out to Belgium. We had an agent. We had an experience with the golf. I told Jeffrey and Angela about this because they're Belgian, right? So told them about this experience. It wasn't really a pro tryout per se, because when we got there, the first team had a game. So they didn't really give us a proper look. It was still a good experience nonetheless, because we're training in Europe for the first time, really. And things aren't really working with this agent. So the guy brings us to Cambuur, which is where Paul Mulders played, right? So he brings us to Cambuur. He's like, he knows the acting manager at the moment. He's a friend of his. So he's like, okay, I'll let you guys, the two of you, train with the reserves. This is the Cambuur reserves. And then by the end of that training camp, we'll give you a game against an amateur team, and we'll invite the public, so we can, any teams that might want to sign you or whatever will be there. So they do all of this. It's a great experience, Chris. We're training with Cambuur reserves. I mean, what can I say? It was tough. High level was high, really, really high, the training. These are all European players eager to get into that first team, you know? So we get to that amateur game, which was a phenomenal experience. My first time, I think my first and only experience of playing 90 minutes in Europe. And they got me playing the 9. They play a traditional 4-3-3 Dutch style. And this game for me, Chris and Jing, was one of the most memorable games, not because I scored or anything, just because I was a part of this experience where I'm with a pro team basically, and we're playing an amateur team. And I can remember, this is why it sticks out, because we won like 3 or 4-0. I have a pretty good game. The players are coming up to me like really surprised. I'm laying balls off, I'm getting shots off, whatever. And the reason why it sticks out is because we were winning 3-4-0, pressing this amateur team the entire match, Chris. And no matter how high we pressed them, they're still trying to play out of the back from a goal kick. It was just the commitment to their philosophy and their style of play. It was really admirable. These are just amateurs, amateurs is still high level in Europe. Don't get me wrong, but here we are smashing them, and they're still trying to play out the back. It was one. I've never been a part of anything like that, so it's kind of eye opening. You realize like, well, us people in America are really far behind, So after that Canberra experience, I'm lucky enough to get in touch with my college roommate, Matthijs Marawanaya, who had played for Alkmaar, AZ Alkmaar. Matthijs is one of my best friends. His brother was playing for Hetteveld, First Division Holland at the time. He just graduated. And I was kind of like lost still. There was, I was kind of reaching out to people like, I'm in Europe, like I got to stay here as long as I can, got to keep trying. So luckily I touched base with him. We're staying in Alkmaar. He lets me train with his amateur team in Alkmaar, which was a wonderful experience for me. I didn't train with their first team. I trained with their second team, but we're still like, I just embraced myself into the culture. I was like riding a bike, like going to the bakeries or cafes and training. It was like the life you would dream, you would want. It was a good experience, really, really good. I think that trip in Europe, even though nothing panned out, it got me a lot of that professional environment and experience that really helped me when I got to the Philippines, I feel. So yeah, 2 weeks go by.
What was the general consensus, Nate? Because obviously you said you felt like you did quite well in the Canberra game. Obviously you've been trying in a few different places. What was the general consensus then if you didn't pick anything up?
General consensus with, what do you mean?
Like what was the why you didn't pick up a contract? Obviously that's what you're there for primarily.
Yeah,
did they give you any feedback or was it circumstantial?
They didn't because Canberra was just kind of giving it. They weren't looking at us. They were kind of just giving us the opportunity to train because there was that connection with the player Kefren and the guy. So they were really just doing us a favor, bro. Really, they were really just doing us a favor, and I'm very thankful because that experience was one of a kind. Really, I mean, how else would I have experienced something like that if you didn't know the right people? So, yeah, I just remember after the game, the players were like kind of shocked. They're like, "Hey, you're doing well. You're holding the ball up. These players were quality players, man. All reserve of Canberra at that time. Like, they had a point to prove, as everyone in Europe does. So, yeah, things. I go back. I'm in Alkmaar. Things aren't really going on. My friend Matthijs' mom is probably at this point like, what's going on with this guy? He's living with us for so long. No, they were so graceful though. They were so hospitable. I love them. I still keep in touch with Matthijs. And so I come home and I end up having to fly back home. A little disappointed, but at least I still had experience, and I'm still doing as many USL tryouts as possible. There was one in Pittsburgh. There was a couple in Real, Maryland. There was a few. These are all paid tryouts, Jing. You go up there, hundreds of kids trying out. They're going to select 2 players, something like this. So none of those pan out. I tore my ACL, took my time, was out for a year. This is where I met your brother's partner, Chris. Well, reconnected with your brother's partner, Mr. Santino Kawanta. So I get my ACL surgery by a doctor by the name of James Gilbert, and I consulted with him basically all of my life except for this last knee injury at Davao. Okay, but he does my ACL, reconstructive ACL, tore meniscus, does me up proper, and then we have this great therapy that they offer also. Metro Orthopedic Sports Therapy was in Silver Spring, Maryland. This is where Santino was. I'm already post-surgery, getting rehab. He's there. I guess he's still with DC United at this point. He has an injury. And I can just remember Chris. I actually played against him because he was in 84 with the regional team. So I remember him. I knew he was like pro already. And he was just, I remember he gave me some positive words. It was nice. He's like, things will get better. Just, stay strong, stay positive. And, I come back slowly. I really took my time with that ACL coming back. Start getting involved in more leagues, start getting comfortable, just playing again anywhere, any and everywhere locally. So I joined the Aegean Hawks, which was an amateur team that played the highest level possible. They actually won the national championship as an amateur team for the amateur cup. I was injured at that point, but I played with them on the weekends. I played with a team by the name of AV Challenge. It's like local leagues, basically. So this is where I get my next opportunity, because I'm playing with AV Challenge. This is like a pub team, basically. We're sponsored by a bar. You know, on the shirt, it's like Bailey's Pub. You know, at this point, I'm already confident. I'm already fully recovered, and I have a hat trick in this game. It's a men's league. I have a hat trick. The ref of this game is a former FIFA ref from Bulgaria. The sideline ref is a guy by the name of Gregov. He works for Alexander Soccer now. Immediately during the game, he's like talking to me. He's like, "We got to talk after this game." So I'm like, "Okay, this is cool." So I'm still dreaming. I never gave up on the dream. So yeah, he's like, "I have a strong agent. We'll bring you to Bulgaria. You deserve to keep playing. I don't know why you're playing here." And I was like, this all happened within a matter of weeks, bro. Like, I get home, I go to their house, sign a contract with this agent, and within like a matter of 2 weeks, I'm telling my my jobs that I'm flying to Bulgaria for this tryout. So I get to Bulgaria, Minor Pernik. Okay, Minor Pernik is a club. Bulgaria, I mean, cold, dark, what can I say, gray. Like, it's definitely an experience. I wouldn't have been happy playing there, but it was definitely an experience of a lifetime. But I'm still chasing it, you know. So I get to the training camp. I do well, scoring goals, feeling confident. I had a journal, because I remember my buddy was having me write about the experience. It's there somewhere online. I wrote every day or every experience, just kind of going over how things were going and how I'm feeling, and I'm feeling confident. You know, it's good news that at the end of that training camp, they're like, "We like you. Come back in January for the preseason." Okay, so I go home that December. This is 2000. Right before I left, 2010, 2011, January, I go for preseason. I was a bit, naive, I would say, to go back in January. You know, it's the holidays. I probably didn't prioritize and focus training. I was like with the family, friends, holidays. January comes around, they fly me back to Bulgaria. And I remember there's a reason why I would say I was a bit naive, was because I remember talking to the agent. I was like, "There's other players here trying out." And he's like, "What? Of course there are. You know, there's players trying out. People are trying to get a contract." So that's when I realized, like, oh, I really gotta have to fight and earn this. You know. So we're in 2 weeks in Bulgaria, and the first week is basically all fitness, no problem with me. I can handle all that. Second week is more on the ball and training, kind of feeling like not really confident, and the levels. I could play in it, but I definitely wasn't my best showing. I wasn't really so confident at this moment. And so we really only had one game at the end of that week. And all of the trial players only had one half, the second half. So after that second half, not really good showing, no goals scored, and, end up coming home. I remember the agent kind of was disappointed, because I was ready to go home at that point. I was really like unhappy. I was like, the agent wanted me to keep trying. He's like, "Well, why don't we try another team?" And at this point, I'm like, I really just want to go home. So he's like, "All right, you want to go home? You pay for your flight, you go home." So that's exactly what I did. I go home, and that's when that's January. By May is when my mom gets that kind of, and she gets in touch with the national team. With Dan Palami, we find out through a family friend that he's also from Tacloban. And he's like, Boss Dan was like, "Great, let him come for the open tryout," which was in May. And this kind of brings me to my story with OJ, which is how OJ is also from Virginia, right? So I can remember OJ when he was 4 years old, because he had a little Team America blue shirt dribbling around on one of the indoor places. And I was like, this kid's he's got some skills, So by the time he's 16, I see him again, and I'm like, this is the same kid. I know it, because the way he plays is like, he's still dribbling around. So this is my first introduction to OJ. We kind of build our friendship there. And I tell him, yeah, this is Anton and Ali. I was in touch with them. They're planning to do this summer trial in California. So that's where he went. He went there, and we were actually in there together for when we arrived in the Philippines for that first day in Alabang, which sadly he injured his knee. But that's kind of my story with OJ. And yeah, that's that. Like, my mom was so stoked, like I said, to tell me about the Philippine national team. And
Man,
yeah, like exactly. This is quite a journey. So at this point, you know, it all happened. I knew it was like, this is it. This is it. So all that experience brought me to the Philippines. It's like all those professional experience really helped me, you know, because you learn a lot. Even though all those failures and successes, you're gonna learn a lot. You know, and if you're still positive, if you're still ready to pursue those dreams, you push hard enough, something will come eventually. You know, I always knew I could play. I always knew I just, where in the world am I gonna play? And I got so much love for the Philippines, and I'm just thankful that it is like a dream come true. You know.
man,
Yeah.
unbelievable how long, and storied the journey is getting to the Philippines, and when we see
Yeah,
you
bro.
here, and as I said, there's that notion of like these foreign born Filipinos just coming over here trying to get an easy payday, trying to take a job. They have no idea where you come from. You know what I mean? They have no idea
Yeah. I was
the
26, Jing. I was 26,
damn.
26
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
arrived. So
So
to
yeah,
to
man.
all those young kids, like, it's really, don't give up. You know what I mean? Like, don't give up, no matter how old you are. You know, you just keep pushing.
Two things stick out to me there from your story, right? First of all, is like how far you had to go in order to make it here to the Philippines, right? I mean, you'd played in Europe, you'd played, as you said, you'd gone to Brazil, you'd played in all kinds of tournaments in the United States. So much competition. There's so much competition for you to stay involved in the game, right? And something that you mentioned in your letter is something that perhaps we don't have here in the Philippines is the wealth of competition, especially in the youth,
Yeah.
right? That's something that is drastically lacking in our environment at the
Yeah.
moment. And for you, you had plenty of opportunities to try to pick yourself back up and try to get yourself to a level that you were happy with. I'm not sure that everybody else has that same opportunity here in the Philippines. It's certainly not
Yeah.
that kind of experience of, having to overcome failure and having to come back up and pick yourself up and try again,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
That's
not
why I
a,
feel like I can help so much, Jing, because the landscape in America and here in the Philippines is very, there's a lot of similarities, you know, a lot of similarities, I think. And when I was growing up in America, it was really still developing.
yeah,
Imagine when I'm born, there's not even a pro league when I'm born, 1985. There's no pro league at that moment. So, you know, I was there for that developmental stages of America. And that's why, we're here in the Philippines, it's basically still developmental stages. So I feel like, there's a lot to take from American, how they went about it, because it's a pay-to-play system, Chris. Same as in Brazil.
Yeah. I think
I'm basically a product of pay-to-play.
yeah, I think there's two really interesting things for me that I took away from that, guys. The first one is that you don't know who's watching you.
Never.
That's one massive one. And I think what some people fall into the trap of is thinking that, okay, this is my big opportunity, when invariably a lot of times it's never that moment that you think is going to be that defining moment of your career. A lot of them are those sliding moments. Someone just happens to walk past your field at one particular point in time.
Yeah.
Who's that guy over there? Oh, it's him. Oh, maybe I'll stay and watch this guy's like.
Yeah.
And invariably that's what transpires as being that pivotal moment in that player's individual career. Like that's a massive one. And there's so many players' careers that seem to hinge on these moments that they didn't even realize was going to be an opportunity for them. So that was something I found really interesting, and something that if there are any kids that are out there listening or watching the episode, need to take heed from that. It's not like, oh, I'm going to play in this cup final and all the scouts are going to be there, or that's not it.
That's Mama Cole.
Hey, Koa. The other one is a competition one. And it's a big problem. It's a massive problem. And it's something that I cannot emphasize enough.
Here in the Philippines.
Across the board, mate.
Across the board.
It is the biggest, for me, debilitating factor here in the Philippines. And is what is the biggest separator in somewhere like Europe. So I look back to my time, and I'm thinking back to, I signed for Brighton when I was 11, 12 years old. So from 12 to 16, every Sunday I was playing in games, and they were tight, they were tough, They were demanding. If you didn't play well one week, you wouldn't play the next, because the difference
Yep.
between the
It's
best player on
cutthroat.
the team and the worst player on the team is
Yeah.
minimal. The difference, the margins are so fine.
Yeah.
The difference
Yeah.
between winning and losing is so fine. And then it's about stepping up through the level. So let's say you go, you're a star player in your age group. Okay, there's only so long you'll be able to play at that level until you're pushed onto the next level. So you have to go and play up an age group, or you have to go and train with an older group, or you have to go and play against better players. And you're always forced to play outside of your comfort zone on a consistent and a regular basis. And I think that's what separates, especially here in the Philippines, versus what I experienced in the UK growing up, is that you only probably get a handful of really competitive games over the course of the year, number one. And the fact that it's not played 11 months of the year here is a problem.
Yeah.
And I know you've touched upon it. And if I'm going to single out one thing that I would agree with you and back you 100% with your open letter is your disdain. I'm going to call it disdain for the festival type scenario. Which for me, it also ties in quite nicely with what you said earlier about your mum making the poor decision on bringing you and your brother to what was perceived to be a better club. Is that, obviously, again, the intentions are good, and she probably just wants them to be on a better team, a more successful team.
Right.
But is that the right thing for your player development? And is going to these tournaments the best thing for player development? The chances are no. Why? Because the kid's going to be playing in the tournament where you absolutely have to win. You have to win. You have to win. You have to win. Are you the tiny, small, physically underdeveloped, really technical player, but not able to impact a game right now? Right. Well, you're sitting on the bench the entire day. You're watching your bigger, physically more capable players play 10 games in one day, and you're just going to go home at the end of that day feeling deflated, feeling miserable, losing enthusiasm for the game, and invariably you'll choose to do a different pursuit. That's the way I see it. And a lot of those kids then slip through the net. Similarly, you'll see the kids that are playing in a tournament, they're winning these games, they're winning the finals 5-0, 6-0, because they've accumulated all of the best talent from one city or one place. They're going smashing everyone. Oh, this is incredible. We're the best. Mum and dad are happy. They put their pictures up on Facebook and Instagram to show off to their friends in the office on a Monday.
Right.
But when your kid gets to 16, 17 years of age and they're playing in a youth national team and you're getting beat 15-0 by Indonesia because those kids have been playing competitive footballs week in, week out, relative to the Philippines anyway, then you realize actually those developmental years were just wasted picking up meaningless trophies. So really, really interesting that for me, what you were saying and being able to pick up on those points, but then kind of going back to your love letter, which is the thing that sort of ties this whole thing together. That I know you have a real disdain for that festival type. So I'm sort of going on a tangent here a little bit, but just talk me through a little bit about talk to me a little bit about your sort of feelings behind that, because you talked about that a lot in your letter.
Listen, youth tournaments. I've been, like I said, I was a part of a lot of youth tournaments. There's nothing wrong with a youth tournament, but when it becomes the norm and the thing that's more consistent, then it's a problem, because it's just one day. These games are 20 minutes. Coaches are only trying to win. They're not trying to play good football. You even see players like wasting time, and it's like, you're a youth player. Why are you wasting time? Like, they're always 7-a-side or 5. I just think, like you said, you got to have a league. You got to have that consistent game, real game, not like compressed game, long 40-minute, 1-hour game, to where they can really take that time to develop. It's all about development, really, at the youth and grassroots level. That's it. There's no question about it. You have to focus on the development, and is playing in these tournaments more of a development? As you said, no, it's not. They're going to get more out of playing consistently weekend on the weekends in a league format. So, these youth tournaments, these festivals, they can be fun at sometimes, but when you're playing more youth tournaments than an actual league, that's not good. That's not good. The league should be the focus. So that was just my idea on a dream or my hopes for what that youth football can look like in the Philippines, because these tournaments aren't the way to go. I think they weekend, and some of them are even 1 day, Chris. When I was with your brothers, when I was took over your brother's team, we played in the JFC tournament. We won. It was a beautiful, beautiful tournament, beautiful experience, but it's just a 1 day tournament. You know, like I don't know. Like I said, if the games are being compressed, it's not good. You really have to space it out, like you said, on the weekends, as opposed to playing 6 games in 1 week and then you don't play a game for months or weeks at a time. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah. Something that stood out to me when what you wrote is that you would love to see in the future, perhaps tournaments being done separately in places in Luzon, separate tournaments being done in Visayas, separate tournaments being done in Mindanao, similar to how it's done in the States, where you've got, you know, your district and then moving on to state and then eventually a national tournament. It could very well be implemented here in the Philippines, right? You have your Mindanao champions, your Visayas champions between, you know, Iloilo, Bacolod, and, you know, Dumaguete. There's so many hotbeds of football there. Luzon, similarly, where you could have NCR battle against, you know, there's Baguio all the way down to, all the way up to Ilocos and all the way down to the southern regions, Batangas and lower, right? I mean, there's so much potential for that, but right now there's nothing going on. With that landscape in mind, how do we get the ball rolling, right? I mean, it's nice to daydream about it because the thing that resonated with me is I've done similar. You know, I really want to get leagues off the ground. I think that's the way forward, honestly. Whether we do it, you know, like a Makati league first, which eventually turns into an NCR league, who knows, right? But how do we start doing it? I mean, because we have the good intentions, but what do you foresee as the first few steps of getting that going?
That's tough, Jing. It's not. I mean, I just look at what Anton did. All right, like this is a prime example. He went out there, he pushed it, you know, and now he's expanded to different parts of the country, which is what you want. Why does it take a former player to do something like that? You know, credit to Anton. He thought of it. He put in the groundwork, but why did it have to come to that? You know, because people don't take the initiative to do something like that. They're so complacent with these tournaments, these festivals, and they want to focus on those things. It could be a money thing, could be a money scheme, could be they really just like those festival things. But for a development standpoint, it's not doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know? So to answer your question, how do we what's the first step? I mean, I guess you just go into the federations of each region, you sit down with them, and then you just kind of you build and you plan. It's not that difficult, really, Jim. You just got to get the right people in the right room and talk about things. You go to the Federation of Mindanao, you go to the federations down in Visayas, and you sit down with them and say, okay, listen, we want to do a league for each of these islands, and the winner, we can have like a tournament at the end. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is just me making things easy. Is it that difficult? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound that difficult if Anton De Rosario was able to do it with the 7th league. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Chris? I mean, what would be the first step?
For sure.
What would be the first step, Chris, in making a youth leagues around the country? What do you think?
Yeah, we said this on the podcast before, Jing. You know, we believe in that same system, that regionalization of tournaments and having it done via the regional FAs. And I think that the big key thing for me here, Nate, is exactly what you said: is how difficult is it to get these guys in the room, and how difficult is it to get these guys into the room and actually speaking about it, turning them into advocates for this type of program. You know, which for me seems like a very easy and logistical. Methodical way of doing it. But I think maybe this is where we are seeing that it's not as easy as we perhaps would think. I don't know, but I know from my experiences sitting in boardrooms where we have, you know, with the YFL, and everyone's got their opinion, and you know, again, it all comes from good intentions. But when you've got you know 21, 30 chefs in the kitchen, it's going to be very hard to cook a good meal. Do you know what I mean? Like and I feel like that seems to be part of a bigger, broader issue across the board. everyone wants to have their say, and then I think ultimately no one's that accountable for whether or not things, go wrong or aren't put in place. People are very quick to put up their hand and say, "Oh yeah, I was part of that initiative," but they're not very, they're definitely always hiding in the background when it comes to
Right.
who's at fault for there being no Philippine players playing in the national team right now that are developed from the homegrown system. So yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's 100%. I think exactly what you're saying is right. But I think the reason why someone like Anton's had to have gone out and done it by himself is because those conversations are very difficult to put in place and very difficult to get by. Nate, that's my take on it, Jing. I don't know if you agree or not, but that seemingly is a problem.
And perhaps the reason why Anton is succeeding so much is because he is outside of the federation. He didn't have to deal with the associations of any of these places that he's expanded to. He's only had to talk to one individual or a group of individuals in that area, and they needed to activate in that region using the model that he supplied, without having to get approval, without having to go through the proper channels. There was nothing. It was fair game. It was the wild, wild west out there for sevens. So clearly, with less red tape, progress is faster, right? I mean, he's already got set up Bacolod. He has one in Iloilo, right? He has one in Cebu, right? And he was, and the concept is already there, bringing everybody together to play in all the champions in those regions coming together to play against one another. Perfect. That's what you want to see across the board, right? That's what you want to see. And it's nice that Anton's already got a bit of a model for us to follow.
Yeah. It's a good thing for sure. Can we replicate it, further on, and can we eventually build an 11-a-side league? Because sevens league is fun, but let's be fair, like the game is 11-a-side. So if you're not playing 11-a-side, what good is playing 7-a-side?
Yeah.
So hopefully in the future that can happen.
So we find ourselves here now, 2020, right? A couple years removed from playing professionally now, having gone through Davao and that entire experience of which was rather short-lived, unfortunately, for that club.
Looking back, I want to touch point on this because I was so desperate and so in a rush to sign a contract with Davao, but I really wish I took my time and sat down with boss Jeff Jing. Maybe he doesn't need my help or not, but looking back, hindsight's 2020 again. I wish I would have sat down with Jeff Jing in a room, say, talk to me. What's your vision? What's your plan? I can help you. I've been on 3 clubs. I've been here since 2011. You want to build a club? Okay, tell me what's your vision? What's your goal? I can help you build the team. I can help in many ways, consult, not just a player, but like I said, at that moment, I was really just trying to ink a deal and secure my family. Because I just found out my girlfriend was pregnant, so I was really just trying to get that contract in. But maybe he would have let me help him, or maybe not. Guys like that might not think how much can I help him, but I definitely feel like my experience could have maybe helped Davao, because for me this is one of the saddest stories in Philippine football. They had so much potential. Really, they had a lot of potential. And I was there from the beginning. I saw how they tried to build. I saw what they went through. I saw their approach. I spoke up, obviously, but there's only so much I can say, or from my position, who's going to listen to me, really. It's just unfortunate the way things ended up for Davao, because they definitely had a lot of aspirations, and they had a lot of plans. I know they had a lot of plans for Davao and Mindanao in itself, but unfortunately things happened the way they did, and they folded.
Right. So that ended, right? And unfortunately for you were on the sidelines at the back end of that one already.
Yeah,
so,
definitely during my injury point, I was like, all right, I'm injured, I can't play, but let me get on like a managerial side, or like try and just get inside, because I saw how things were unfolding and things were gonna go down soon, quickly, which they did. I saw all that. I foresaw all that. They're signing too many players, too fast, too big of money. It's like, what are you trying to build here? What are you really trying to build?
So do you
Obviously,
see yourself?
they just wanted a championship. Go ahead.
Do you see yourself like getting involved in professional football in some capacity down the road? I know you're involved in youth
Possibly,
coaching right now.
possibly.
So
Yeah, I'm doing the youth and the grassroots. That's kind of where my bread and butter. I love connecting with the kids and seeing the way how the league is now. It's not really the best time. Maybe in the future. I told Coco I would love to start commentating these PFL games whenever they start. That's kind of like a step in it.
I think you'd
And
be great at that, man. I was just thinking that
yeah,
actually.
yeah. I told him I'd love to. I want to help any way I can help. I want to help. And obviously I can't play anymore, so you just kind of gotta look at what can you help with. So yeah, I can coach, but even just commentating games, I think you got some in there who kind of has some experience, knows a little bit about football, been traveled. Like he might be able to help. Could be good. So I told Coco, and he was go on. And I also told him of my dream to maybe coach a youth national team. As far as the professional game, I'm open to it in the future if the timing's right and the opportunity's right. I think I could be open to it. It really just depends, Jing. Really just depends. I definitely
So
want to go ahead and continue my coaching courses. I think starting with the AFCC and then maybe follow what Chris and guys like Ormond did with that UEFA B in the future. But I have my AFCC and a D license in America, which is not really worthy. But I think the next step would be another AFC B, which is done regionally or domestically, and then maybe in the future could do something like what Chris did and what Ormond did and my buddy from Guam, Jay Cunliffe, did, which is take the UEFA B in Ireland.
let's see. So coaching badges on the horizon for you.
Possibly. I mean, it's in the mind. Definitely now that I'm getting back into it. The first one would be the AFC B because I already have the C. And like I said, it could be done in the Philippines or at least regionally. But ultimately, if I am going to jump in, I want to get the best I can get, which would be a UEFA. So we'll see. Just kind of aspirations as of now, and we'll see how that road takes.
We didn't get an opportunity, Chris, to really speak to Nate about your experiences playing domestically with the UFL and all of that. I mean, although we are
Oh
running
yeah, there's so many experiences, so many stories, man.
a bit long. I mean, I'd recommend checking out Nate's highlights on YouTube. Nate Burkey's highlights, man. There's from UMAC to Rizal to Emperador. So many games, man.
Fun times.
What would you say is the standout moment?
That's just 2011, really.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I think that was obviously before me. So my first season with Nate, or actually my only season with Nate at Kaya was 2013. But what was interesting about that period, we had Maor at the start for a short period, which was eventful, and then I came in, took the team for 3 games. And then obviously Dave came in.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was such I want to say a fun period, but also a very tumultuous period in the club. But I mean, Nate was probably pretty pivotal in some of the most iconic games of that period for sure. I'm looking at the global game, probably the standout one, 2-0 down, dead and buried. Come back to win the game 3-2. Nate scores 2.
Yep.
I mean, that's got to be the standout game. I'd imagine probably one of the highlights of your career.
Definitely one of, early on we had Juan Petilius, we had Kale, and then, like you said, Maor came. That game was definitely a highlight. Beating Global at any league cup, any point is going to be monumental because they were the team. At that point in football, Philippine football, they were the team. So, I definitely coming to the end of my Kaya days. I remember because I started coaching with you, and I guess I was going through a little bit of a slump with my playing. I've had some personal issues with my relationship at the time, and these were their reasons for not re-signing me because I didn't really score many goals. But I remember being very, very disappointed with how things worked out, Jing and Chris. And this is just me opening up, being honest. The way Kaya released me, I felt was very disrespectful. I had a meeting with Paul right before I left. We sat down and we talked. The conversation, nothing was final or determined, but it was kind of like, yeah, your contract's up. Let's talk over the holiday, kind of making me feel like, okay, things can we can work from this, we'll work something out. So I go home and Paul and I have some phone conversations that I can remember weren't so pleasant. He's kind of arguing to the point like, yeah, Nate, you're a striker. You only scored X amount of goals. And, to credit, it's like I'm also an academy coach. I've also been with the club for years. And maybe I don't deserve an increase in salary, but there's some value there. So the conversation didn't go too well. The next communication is an email telling me, sorry, Nate, coach and I, we're not going to re-sign you. I didn't even reply. I was so, came out of left field. I'm home in the States. And I just felt a guy's been at the club for that long, give him a phone call at least, And my whole point was I had to sit down with Paul. If that's how he felt now, tell me then. But I really feel like that conversation we had over the phone that wasn't really so pleasant, so smooth, that kind of what led to it. But I remember there was a little bitterness. And looking back, I wish I would have handled things differently when I got to Pachanga because, the community's small. I don't want to hate Kai, and I didn't. But, there was definitely some grudge towards the management and the coach at the time. Looking back, it's like, I wish I would have handled things differently because I remember that first game you played in this game, Chris. I remember that first game when Pachanga played Kai. I was so amped and so up for it. But I was like, my head should have just been focused on playing football as opposed to getting back at this club, things smooth out over the years, but that's definitely something I wanted to point out here because it was a disappointment for me. But like most things, they worked out for the best. I go on to Pachanga. They actually gave me more money. And I remember, Chris, this is a very test of your character. Chris calls me Jing, and he's like, mate, the academy's mine. Like, you still want to coach. I love you. Like, he didn't say I love you, but you're more than welcome to coach. And I told him, I really appreciate that, Chris, and I really enjoyed coaching with you. Chris, this is the truth. I really enjoyed coaching with you. You were helping me. You were guiding me a lot. I remember those. If you can remember those coaching days, in BGC Turf, they were fun times. And Chris really helped me with my coaching at that moment. But it didn't sit right with me coaching for a club that I'm not playing for that released me the way they did. So luckily, the Young Husband brothers set me up with their Chelsea Football Academy at the time, and very thankful for that. They gave me a nice salary, and which is what I kind of had to live off of because Pachanga had some months where I wasn't getting paid. But I remember just telling Chris, thank you, but I just don't feel right. So at that moment, I started playing for Pachanga, and I engulfed in that role as technical director for the Chelsea Football Academy, which was a very good experience for me. I'm not coaching directly, but just kind of overseeing things. And, it was overall a really, really good experience. And that year, Pachanga brought me back to the national team, as I had that hiatus. But, Noel gave me some good opportunity. This is like the moment in my career where I really get back into Philippine football per se, in the roots of Philippine football. My coach is local. Most of the players are all local. I'm coaching again with the academy. It was just I went and got my AFCC license when I was at Pachanga. It's in that year where I'm really getting my roots back into Philippine football. And that's how I was able to, come out of, continue my career really, is that Pachanga year. We had that great run in the UFL Cup final. You read my post. I said maybe things would have been different, but the brotherhood and the culture there in Pachanga was a lot of fun. But also I respect Noel because this was my first local coach, aside from Juan Patiles, who had already retired, but my first local coach who kind of took coaching me, and I really respected him from the beginning. I had a good experience with him. Really, really good experience with him.
Man, that was an iconic run. That 2013 UFL Cup. Because of
that was so much fun.
That final, unfortunately, you missed it. But what an atmosphere that was, man! And what a game!
Totally.
And what a game
Yeah,
that was.
really good game. Really good game.
And that to me
Like,
epitomized sort of the potential of Philippine club football. Was
yeah.
like,
Yeah,
and if we
exactly.
can
Exactly.
recreate this vibe on a regular basis, we've got something special. That's what
Yeah.
that's what it felt like, you know, during that time.
Yeah. So Pachanga season's ending. I had a great got back called back to the national team, had a good season, and um Global showed some interest. I remember because they won the league that year, and Global was interested, and I was just kind of like waiting to hear and see if Saris is going to reach out to me because Orman or Okanaya. Fun fact about Orman, you guys all picked Orman, right? For your 4 and U11. The guy didn't play a single AFC Cup match at all, not one. He was not in the lineup or the roster. Imagine
Why?
that. You guys, personal issues. I mean, I can't really say why. This first year we had Coach Cha, second year we had Coach Ali and Coach Frank. I mean, I don't know. That's something I can't really answer. That's Armand will answer. I spoke to him to confirm before I got before this, and I was like, you didn't play in any AFC, right? And I'm like, no. He's like, no, I didn't. He gave his spiel. He was there in the Maldives for that first game, but no, he didn't play. And just unfortunate because he was such a quality player and he really deserved to play. Not saying other guys didn't deserve to play, but if anyone, Orman should have been in there. So yeah, going back to that transition period, I go sit down with Boss Dan and Global guys after the game, and we have a good talk. But I'm just kind of like waiting to see if Saris is going to reach out, which they did, and I politely declined from Boss Dan and had that experience there with Saris, which was unforgettable, really. I definitely wanted to touch point on this, Chris, because you had your things to say about LRY, and I just kind of gotta speak up for the guy because I actually met him and spent time with him and saw his intentions with football at the time. I don't know if you've met him or not, but it's my theory that in his mind he's really doing all that he can do to grow and develop Philippine football from his point of view, And he also did a lot of other things aside from Saris, because I don't know if you know, he supports the college teams. He puts on so many youth tournaments. I just believe his intentions were good. Could he have done things differently, Chris? 100%. We all can do things differently. Could he have done maybe things a little better? Of course. But like I said, it is my opinion that the guy had good intentions and he was doing the best that he could do. And yeah, like I said, could he have done more? Totally. But he also changed a lot. He also did, we can't throw out what he did. He put the club on the map, and he also touched a lot of lives, Chris. This is I'll go on record saying this. This is the most generous man I've ever met in my entire life. He just has a humble heart. He's really like a father figure. He's not a football guy, Chris. He's a businessman. So, he didn't look at it from a football perspective. He's just a competitive businessman. I don't know if you know the story on how he got his company, but he took over his father, built the company from 2 buses, handed it down to him and grew it into what it was. So, and I know this for a fact because I spoke with Coco, and they really had plans before COVID. They really had some long-term plans. It just so happens that Saris being a cash cow and a cash business, COVID really just threw them under, And I just wanted to touch point on that, Chris, because this is my personal experience with the man. And I really feel like he had the best intentions and he did all that he could do from his side, from his eyes, from his point of view. And at the end of the day, it is his fucking money, He can do what the hell he wants to do.
No, I think that's good.
Of course, he could have done an academy. He could have done so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and I think when Jing and I did that episode about the proposed, is this the death of Philippine football? Like, he didn't want it to come across as being bashing LOI at all, because like you said, he put the country on the map in so many ways. And without him, we wouldn't have had so many amazing players come and play in the Philippines.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have had, like you said, so many people's lives would have changed just from obviously being able to provide them, the players, their families, with an opportunity to have a bona fide life here. You know, I know a lot of the Ceres boys obviously were really, really close with them, close with him. And like you said, his generous side was always something that they would really, really highlight. And that's, you know, that's something, you know, like, and something that always stuck with me with him was like, they would say how he would invite players round to watch, you know, watch a movie or play video games, or, you know, just have a little drink with him. And, you know, that aspect, I think maybe that's something that we underplayed. And if it came across that way, then obviously we apologize for that. But yeah,
no apologies. It's just my point of view.
No. I think it's totally valid, because I think it's nice for you to paint like a fuller picture of what he was like.
He did a lot down there.
Yeah.
That maybe people don't really know about, but that's just the guy he is.
Yeah. Really interesting. I appreciate that insight.
Yeah, I thought you would like that, and I just felt like it was necessary to kind of speak up. But you definitely have some valid points there. The PFF and the AFC should be 100%. That was the point that you made. They should be 100% accountable for how Ceres, you know, what happened with Ceres. You're absolutely right with that, Chris, and I totally agree with you, because imagine they let him do whatever the hell he wanted to do. So that's what he did. If there's no, you know, structure, or, all right, LOI, this is what, you know, this is what needs to happen, or at least stick in this kind of boundaries. But it's just free for all. And unfortunately, things turned out the way it did. But I totally agree with you, Chris, when you said that the PFL and the AFC should be held accountable, because they all know Philippines is a developing country. They need to be hands-on, helping us in every situation possible. How can we get this league better? You know, and they didn't. You know, they did nothing. They just, okay, we'll take your money. You're now AFC National League. What's next? You know, but there should be some type of guideline or instruction or something for a developing country and a developing league like Philippines was, but there wasn't. You know, but yeah, you got to hold those people accountable too, Chris. Got to, man.
Yeah, that's what we talked about, didn't we, on the show?
I know.
I think, yeah, like I'm sure, I haven't spoken to him. I'd love to sit down and have a chat with LOI. I'm sure and again, not to come back to making out that we're bashing him. I'm sure if we sat down with him and said, hey, what do you reckon you could have done things differently? He'd probably go, yeah, you know, I would have done a lot different. You know what I mean? So it wasn't.
Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, and I think I stand by what I said with that, mate. And I think you're right to highlight it.
Man.
I think he again, we come back to the good intentions portion. But he's a businessman. He's not you know what I mean? He hasn't had experience of this. He's new at this, and everyone needs guidance. And unfortunately, that's something that's been that was lacking. And now we're left with the situation that we find ourselves in, which is not having enough teams. We've left with a team obviously having to absorb a new guise, a new identity, which is a shame, because especially after all the work that you put in, for him to potentially not have that anymore, it's really, really sad.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, you just have to look at the last, somebody posted all the champions of Southeast Asia in the last 10 years, right? And you look at all the dynasties that have been erected over the course of, you know, in this region. You know, you have the Buriram Uniteds, and in the Philippines, it was Ceres over the last 5 years. It was Global and Ceres over the last 7. And you really get a sense that, wow, man, he's built something incredible over these last 5 years, but it's gone. It's just disappeared, you know? And just as the rest of the world was taking notice, the rest of this region was taking notice of Ceres as an Asian powerhouse, not as a Philippine powerhouse. He's unfortunately had to give that up. So it is what it is at this point in time.
It's what it is.
I wouldn't be surprised if things turn around and the cash cow that is Ceres gets back on its feet. I wouldn't be surprised if Ceres comes back and becomes a football club once again. But man, it's been a tremendous chat, man. It's been 2 hours just flying by, getting to know you. I mean, I consider you a friend, but I didn't know anything about all that backstory of you growing up in the States and all the things that you had to go through in order to make it to our shores here in the Philippines. And of course, the adventure that you had here. So I think it's been a real fantastic opportunity to get to know you as a person, not just as a footballer. And
I appreciate that.
To get a sense of where you're at right now, in your career. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, like it's the federation's job to try to set the boundaries and set the structure.
Totally. They're like the government. They're the government.
I agree with that. But personally, over the last 10 years, what have you, like, we've not seen, I don't mean to disrespect anyone, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that they need in order to get the right things in place, but we've not seen the kind of progress perhaps that we were hoping to see when we were so excited once the boom started in 2010, right? We all feel as if there's something that can still be done, and we see areas of improvement. And I feel like individuals like yourself, individuals like Anton, Chris, individuals who have the passion for the game, you guys are going to move things forward, and hopefully us here on Across the Line get an opportunity to share your stories, and that will, exponentially grow things as more people get, enlightened about the situation that we're in. So hopefully this will create a little bit more passion or ripple through the Philippine football community, and that'll spark some change.
Listen, there's only one way to go, only one direction to go from here, And we're all in the same boat. It's just which way you rowing, which way you progressing or you going backwards.
Yeah,
we're all in it. We're all in this boat of Philippine football together. Which way do you want to row? Do you want to be progressive and get things better, or do you want to go the opposite?
Yeah, man. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and the time that you spent with us here on the show. Chris, anything else you'd like to throw Nate's way?
No, thanks for coming on the show, mate. I really appreciate it. It's like Jing was alluding to. It's a story that on the surface we probably think we know, but a lot of those things, even being your teammate for a number of years, though, I was really unfamiliar with some of those aspects of your background. And I think it's a great tale for especially young players coming through, who have the opportunity to, have 2 hours to listen to this or 2 hours to read your letter, to find out, what it really takes in order just to have a career in football. We're not talking about maybe, playing at, Barcelona or Real Madrid, but in order just to make it in the game or to have some kind of career in football, it takes a lot, it takes a lot, loads of trials, tribulations, ups and downs. And, if you're that guy who's currently at school flunking out or having a problem with your schoolwork, there's still an opportunity for you. If you're the guy on the precipice of success, then you got to take the opportunity. If you're that guy at the moment who's on top of his game, then you got to continue to strive to, to want to get better. I think all of those things you've outlined in your story, and there's something for everyone to take from that. So I appreciate you taking the time to share it with us, and it's been a really good listen.
Thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I really appreciate it. And like I said before, what you guys are doing is a really good thing for the landscape and for all of Philippine football. It's good dialogue. I've been listening. It's really good dialogue, and it's just good conversation and ideas, and talking is all good. And I think, I'm always optimistic. I think things are gonna progress and hopefully get better. And all we can do is try and help. But if we don't talk about these things and really dialogue and digest them, then same things are gonna happen over and over again. So really, thank you guys for what you're doing, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to just speak a little bit about myself, a little bit about my experiences, and to just to be here. Thank you guys, really, thank you.
Absolute pleasure, Nate. Look for him on Instagram. Anywhere else that they could find you, it's just Nate Burkey. Are you on Twitter as well?
Yes, I started tweeting again. It's funny thing about Twitter. Instagram wasn't on when I got here. Twitter was, and OJ, being the young guy what he was, he actually set up my Twitter account, which I recently started tweeting again, or at least linking it to my other accounts. And it's all Nate Burkey, Twitter, Instagram.
All right, look for him on social media, and also make sure that you are tuned into everything that we're doing here on Across the Line. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. If you like this episode with Nate Burkey, please do subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts, and we will catch you on the next Football Friday.